What's up guys, Bart from Caldwell Painting. Today we are doing a oak cabinet door repaint. So this style of painting and what we're going to be doing to this today is going to be geared more towards the DIYer style. This is not how we do cabinets professionally, so if you hire us to paint your cabinets, this is not the same process that we're going to be using. However, the way that we paint cabinets is not very DIY friendly, and I wanted to just give a simple, easy DIY style cabinet that I would recommend to somebody that is, painting oak cabinets, especially this lovely, it's a little darker than a golden oak. But the products that we're using today, we're going to be using the white pigmented shellac from Sherwin-Williams for our primer, and then we're going to be finishing that off with emerald urethane in the color upward in a satin finish for our finish coat. All right, so what we want to do, step number one for your cabinet repaint that you're doing, it's really best if you use something like a Krud Kutter, and you can use a rag to just kind of degrease your cabinets. They've lived a lot of life before you've decided to paint them. So just remember, paint does not stick to grease and paint never sticks to dust. So to expedite that process a little bit, to cut through the grease, and also you can just jump straight into sanding, and eventually you will get that grease off, but you're going to go through a lot more sanding pads if you don't degrease them first. So Krud Kutter is a product that I recommend on that. So with these, what we're going to do is first start off, we don't have to sand it all the way down to raw wood, but we do need to knock that old sheen off of it. So any spots that you see shiny, we got to make those go away. So I'm going to sand this real quick. So to speed things along on your end, I'm not going to show you the entire process of me sanding. I'm using a sanding pad. I like how the sanding pads will kind of contour to the shapes of your cabinets, more so than just just like a block or a random orbital. A random orbital sander is great for your flat portions if you want to do that, but when you're sanding, just be careful not to roll over those edges. You want to keep those edges sharp, so don't turn it, don't lift it to its side. If you're using a power sander, keep it flat. If on these sections here, like in all these grooves and rounded pieces, you're probably going to want to use a sponge sander. So I'm going to sand these real quick, and yeah, we'll jump ahead after that. See you in a second. All right, so we got our door sanded. Something to consider when you're doing your boxes as well. Same practices, same techniques that we're using on the door apply to the boxes as well. So in full transparency, I did not sand this door by hand. Took it back to the sanding table and used a power sander on it. So if you're doing your whole kitchen, I would run to Lowe's or Home Depot. Just get a random orbital sander. The sandpaper you want to use on it is probably going to be about 160 grit. Will probably be just right for you, depending on the finish and that you're going for. But 160 grit, I like it because it gives a good base for your primer to bond to. Puts a good scratch pattern on your wood. So we got this one deglossed, and so now we're going to prime it with our shellac primer. And what I'm going to do here, and the reason I chose the shellac primer in this instance, I was thinking about the DIY process. A lot of people, if they're going to a solid color, solid painted color with their oak cabinets, one of the things with oak is it has a very wide grain, so that grain will telegraph through to your finish coat and still just kind of have that wood look underneath it. There's a couple things that you can do for that. If you want a full grain fill, I would recommend a product called Aqua Coat. You can just put it, it's kind of like a real watery putty. We use it and with little plastic spreader putty knives, and that works pretty good. But that's an extra step, and if you're going to do that, once you put the Aqua Coat on, you would put it on in this phase right after you sanded. Then you got to come back and after that dries, sand it again flat, and then go to your primer and finish coat. So today we're going to use the shellac primer because the shellac, I'm going to roll it on and then come back with a brush and kind of fill in some of that wood grain. Now that wood grain will still show up in your finish coat, but it's not going to be as dramatic with those shellac primer. Let me open this up real quick. And another thing with shellac is it stinks. So wear a respirator when you're using it. All right, there we go. So I'm just going to roll this on. I don't love the rolled finish on cabinets, so I'm just using the roller to get my paint on there, or my primer in this case. And then I'm going to come back with a brush and just kind of work it in a little bit more for a little smoother finish. And take my brush, just go straight up and down, fill in those wood grains. A primer coat, you want to get it smooth, but you don't need to be overly worried about how smooth it is, because we are going to sand this coat. It's not going to take as long to sand as, you know, sanding the first time, but it will require some sanding just to help smooth it out. See if I can get it down there. Yep. So the other thing about a shellac is it dries pretty quick, so you don't have a whole lot of time before it starts setting up. Also, if you're doing your cabinets flat like I am, even though I'm doing the fronts right now, I recommend starting on the backs first. That way, you're not putting your painted surface, your show surface, your fronts, right down on the fronts, or on your work table. All right, let me finish rolling this one out, and we'll let this dry, and I'm going to do a quick sand on it, and then we'll be jumping into our finish coats. So I just let the shellac primer dry, went back there, did a quick sand on it to smooth it out. A couple things to consider when using a shellac primer to clean up. It won't clean up with water. You have to use a denatured alcohol. So when you're at Sherwin-Williams buying the shellac primer, also buy a can of denatured alcohol to clean up your brushes and rollers. So one of the things that I love so much about shellac primer is how easy it sands. And when you're sanding it, in these little nooks and crannies here, you definitely want to use either a sponge or just a piece of sandpaper to really work in there and get out any high spots. Also, what you may see is in areas where you put too much shellac, it may do what's called mud cracking. And that's okay. If you get that, just sand that smooth and you'll be good to go. The other thing that I like about shellac primer for this use case is its ability to stain block. So especially on darker stained oak cabinets, when you refinish them, they have a tendency to leach color back through. And if you're going to a lighter white or something like that, that shellac primer is going to help seal that. Another primer that you could look at using for this is the Sherwin-Williams Pro Block. It also will block tannin bleed. So if after your first coat you still have a bunch of coloration coming through and you're wanting to use a bright white for your finish coat, at this point it may be a good idea to either go over it again with another coat of shellac, or switch over to a Pro Block or a stain blocking primer before your finish coat. So again, I just want to emphasize that these are not the techniques or products that we use to finish our cabinets. This is strictly just for the DIY and something that would be easy for the average DIYer to do at their house. So now we're going to go to our first coat of finish. We're using the Emerald Urethane in Upward. Let's get this opened up. Maybe. There we go. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna start on my outside edges and work my way in. Load up the brush here. And I like these angled brushes for doing cabinet doors because the angle, it makes it easier to get into those edges and corners and stuff. So makes life a little bit easier for us. And what I like about the emerald urethane on a project like this, it takes a little longer to dry, which when we're brushing isn't necessarily a bad thing. But also the urethane element, the hybrid element of it, makes it cure a little bit harder than your standard trim paint. And we use emerald urethane on trim. We don't use it on cabinets. And for each area, if you can come back across it and just lightly tip off your brush, what you'll notice, the light pressure after you're fully coated, that it'll level out better for you. What I like to do is, in those 45-degree angles, just kind of go with the natural wood grain there, or not the wood grain, through the joint, and use that sash and that angle to you know, pull that corner out, and it makes it look a little more natural. So instead of having a brush mark just running across it. You want to make sure you have plenty of paint on your brush. That way there's plenty of paint there to level out for you. If you dry brush it and overwork it, you're not going to leave enough paint on the surface to level out. Kind of that corner there. All right, I'm going to finish painting this out and let it dry, and we'll see what we got here in just a second. All right, so our first coat's dry, and it's looking pretty good, but the thing with doing a second coat is it's going to help level into that first coat. And also, you know, when you're brushing it on and you think you got full coverage and stuff, when paint's wet, it's much thicker. When it dries down, it gets tighter, it gets kind of shrinks as the water escapes it. So what you think you may have fully covered may turn out that you don't. So it's important to just anticipate that you're always going to have to do 2 coats, and don't try and get so much paint on your surface because then you may have drying issues, bonding issues, that kind of thing. So always assume that you're going to have to do 2 coats of finish. So all we're going to do for this one, if your first coat's kind of rough, you know, and you kind of messed up in some spots, wait a little bit longer, and then you can do a light sand on it and work out those, you know, those little rough spots or spots you don't like or drips, stuff like that, before moving on to your second coat and hopefully your final coat. So what we're going to do this time, you know, load up our brush. We're going to start on these edges and do the center boards first. All right, it's looking pretty good. All right, so we're going to let that dry, and let's see the end result. So typically with emerald urethane, depending on the condition, you're usually going to be looking around 45 minutes to an hour to the touch. Don't quote me on that. Definitely check out their technical data sheet. Recoat time, you're looking at about 2 hours. Before putting your cabinet fully back into use, I would let it sit for 24 hours before you start hanging doors and you know, start using your kitchen. So yeah, we're going to let this dry, and here in just a minute we'll check out the end result. So our cabinet door is now dry. So that's 2 coats on with Sherwin-Williams Emerald brushed. So the thing with brushing cabinet doors, yes, it's going to leave brush marks. If you're wanting a smoother finish, you're going to have to prep different, and then you're also going to have to spray. Now, there's also, and I can see them now in the comments, oh, you can roll them, you can use a sponge roller, you can use, I don't know, whatever. And yeah, with a roller, sometimes if you have the skill set, you can get a smoother finish with a roller, especially with a product like Emerald Urethane. It levels out so good that sometimes a roller will give you a smoother finish. What I don't like about a roller on your finish coats is it tends to catch in corners, and then you get a lot of buildup in corners. And that buildup will end up cracking or not drying right, and maybe even mud cracking. So what I like about the brush, especially the angled brush, is you can dig out all that excess paint from your edges, from your corners, and get a finish like this. One of the things, I don't know if it shows up or not, but the reason I do meet my two points of the paint is I like for that overlap mark, that lap mark, to kind of melt together the best that it can. But what you'll see is it's in natural alignment with that joint. So that joint's really always going to be there. And then that way it doesn't draw your eye instead of bringing it like a square, bringing them across like that. I like that 45-degree angle and just kind of work with the piece that you have. Like I was saying before, doing your boxes, pretty much the same principle. Possibly use a roller on that. And probably try a sponge roller or brush them. So what the cool thing about the boxes, though, all the doors cover the boxes, so you don't really see as much except for like the side panels or some maybe around a kitchen island or something. So it's painting your own cabinets is very time consuming, but having your cabinets professionally done with professional products is also very expensive. So if you're kind of in between swapping out your doors or getting new cabinets and want to get a couple more years out of the kitchen that you have, it's definitely something that is achievable and something worth tackling for most DIYers. So just take your time, go through the process, follow the steps. If you don't like something, sand it, start over. But yeah, that's really it. So I hope this gives you the courage or maybe a little bit of knowledge to tackle your kitchen cabinets or bathroom cabinets. So if you paint your cabinets yourself or have painted your cabinets yourself before, put it in the comments, tell us how it went. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. I think my next DIY cabinet video, I'm gonna get a like a spray rig, like one of the Wagner spray rigs, something that some DIYers will have or easily be able to get and afford, and show you a DIY process of how to spray your cabinets. So yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, I'll see you then. Be good. See ya.